Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. It is me, Kay. Y'all, I got up. I set the alarm and I got up to watch the episode early this morning. And I'm here today to review the series finale. Season 8, episode 10, The Last Dance of The Chi. I can't believe that the show is over. I came to The Chi as a late watcher. I think I came in like season 6. But, well, I actually thought the show was going to go to 10 seasons, honestly. Because I was like, the show's been on TV for forever. But, you know, it ain't work out like that. But nonetheless, I'm glad that I was able to watch the show in its entirety and watch a couple seasons live. And, you know, I'm happy that, you know, there was a TV show, specifically a Black TV show, that was able to have such a run and to, you know, be so impactful, meaningful to our community. You know, it's few far in between of shows, you know, that have so many iconic moments, to have such a large cast that gives so many different stories, to show so many different perspectives of life. So I'm grateful that, you know, I was able to partake in this presentation. So, y'all, what did y'all think of the episode? First of all, drop your comments down below and let me know what y'all thought of the episode. The episode starts with Keisha and Emmett in the bed, and Keisha is crying, which I know y'all probably was upset about that because y'all been riding Keisha all season long. But, you know, I had grace for Keisha because, I don't know, just one, because Keisha has been through a lot. And it's not that she didn't love Emmett or that she still had feelings for Nuck, but I definitely think that, you know, as a girl who lost her father, and then she had her son to lose his father, I guess she just maybe wanted a different life for Ronnie. And then, as we know, Nuck somewhat served as a protector of their family. And so, you know, him not being around and then just knowing, like, can you imagine if, you know, we know all the things Nuck did. Let's not, we're not going to bypass that. But just imagine, you know, like if something like that happens to your family and then the people in your family all knew and then you was last to know about it. So, you know, I feel like her hurt might have been a little layered. But yeah, I was able to extend her grace for that. But nonetheless, you know, Emmett told Keisha, he was like, you know, we got to be able to move past this. You know, she is the mother of my child. And Keisha was like, why are you taking her side? And he was just like, because at the end of the day, Tiff is still going to be family. And you know what? In this moment, I liked Emmett's perspective. He was patient with Keisha. He listened to her. He let her express the way she felt. And then he was able to give her a different perspective. And so we see Tiff come and, well, actually, Edith said that she does not want to have the wedding at Tiff's house. And so Emmett was like, well, let me figure out, you know, let me handle the location. Just trust me or whatever like that. And he asked her, did she trust him? He asked her, did she trust him? And, you know, she took a little minute to answer, but she eventually said yes. And then in the next scene, we see Tiff come to, I think, their house. And, you know, she had a conversation with Keisha. And, you know, Keisha was just like, you know, I don't want to forgive you, but I have to forgive you for our kids. And then, you know, she told Tiff that, you know, it would take time before, you know, everything, you know, before she feels comfortable again. which surprisingly, I thought Tiff was still disinvited to the wedding. But y'all, Tiff was at the wedding. Because you going to be beefing at the wedding, you going to be beefing at the wedding. Okay, let me be serious. Well, yeah, she was just like, I'm doing this for our kids, you know, because they still family. And then, you know, Tiff was thankful that she was even heard out, you know what I mean? Then we see Emmett have a conversation with Darnell. And I thought that Emmett was going to actually tell Darnell the truth about, you know, everything. But we never really saw Emmett tell Darnell about, you know, the whole thing with Nuck. Because, you know, remember, everybody was asking about Nuck at the bachelor party. So I thought that Emmett was gonna tell him, but he didn't. But then Emmett told Darnell that, like, he wanted to have the wedding at his house. But, you know, Darnell had already given the house to Rashad. So basically, you know, he said that Jada came to him in a dream and, you know, told him to have the wedding there, which is, I think, iconic because Jada and Darnell got married in their backyard when they got married. So I'm just like, oh, it's like a, you know. And that was such a happy event to, you know, bring in, you know, Patience and Rashad and Mondo moving into the house. And so then we see Emmett ask Trig and Rashad to be his groomsman. And they was like, it's last minute, ain't it? But of course they say yes. And then we see Rashad tell Trig, you know, thank you for all that you done for me. And of course, you know, Trig was just like, you know, you've been like a brother to me. And they just exchanged heartfelt words. I ain't gonna lie to you. Them words that Trig was saying, it was given that was the last conversation they was gonna have. And I was like, Now I know y'all ain't about to wrap this up like this. Trig can't be the one to go. But as we watched, Trig wasn't the one to go. But yeah, and so, you know, Rashad was very thankful because they was like, they both been through a lot. They both been through a lot together and they held each other down. And you know what? I liked that we were able to see their friendship develop over seasons because I think we had like 3, 4 or 5 seasons of them. No, it was more than 3. We had like 4 or 5 seasons of them being friends. So we were able to see their relationship grow and develop and how they held each other down through like whatever was going on, you know? Also, we had been having episodes of Rashad trying to figure out what exactly the information was Trig was hiding. They never said anything about it. I was ready for Trig to tell Rashad the tea. Especially since Reg went to jail. Especially since they found the body in the backyard at Tiff's house. Ain't nobody say nothing about that. Nobody heard the news. They ain't had it on the news that the body was found. Matter of fact, now I think about it, since we were talking about Trig, you know, I thought we was going to have some type of wrap up with Toussaint and, you know, maybe Tiff trying to help Reg get out. Anyway. So then, of course, we see the backyard is decorated beautiful. Then we have this moment with Keisha and Riley. And, you know, Keisha is thanking Riley for being there. And Riley's telling Keisha, you know, she always wished she had a daughter. And it's given that Riley and her husband didn't have any children. Because I haven't seen, you know, no kids this whole season. And so Keisha is, you know, doing the things that brides do. She's doing her makeup. They taking her hair out. They showed us the garter. They showed us Emmett ring. They showed us the shoes. They showed us the dress. You know what I'm saying? And so Keisha even asked Riley, you know, like, will today make you sad? Because, you know, Riley lost her spouse as well. And so she was like, no, well, this made me think of love, y'all. And guess who popped up in the bridal suite? Nina. I was like, oh, Nina, hey, girl. Hey, how nice of you to join us, girl. And so Keisha and Nina have their little moment where they hug, they embrace. Nina says how, you know, happy she is to see Keisha. And Keisha was just like, well, I'm glad you're here because you know you missed the birth of my second baby. And then Nina was like, I know I'm going to have to hear about that a lot. But Keisha was just like, oh, well, it's okay. You were there for my first one. So it's fine. I forgive you. And so I was happy to see that little moment of like bonding between Nina. And I'm happy that they had Nina show back up for the wedding. So then the wedding is about to start. Of course, we see Emmett walk down first. Then we see Darnell, Trig, and Rashad walk down. Then we see Devontae. Oh, I forgot to mention when the boys were getting ready in the groom suite. It was a very touching moment between Emmett and Devontae. And Emmett asked Devontae to hold the rings. And Devontae said, you know, basically like, what if I lose them? And he was just like, you won't. And then he was just like, I trust you or whatever. And, you know, Devontae looked at Emmett and just, you know, told him thank you. And he started crying. He told him he loved him. And Emmett just embraced him. And it was such a cute, sweet moment. And then to have Darnell sitting in the background, you know, I was just like, oh my God, Emmett, you being a change in the family. You being a change in your family. And it looked like a proud papa moment for Darnell because, you know, he was able to, you know, see his grandson and his son have such a tender moment, you know, since, you know, Darnell and Emmett their relationship has grown, you know, over the years. It has developed because, you know, they both have admitted to not being in their children's lives the way they should have been. But the change and, you know, Devontae being able to stay with them, you know, it's just a beautiful thing, We're back to the wedding. So Devontae walks down the aisle, and then we see little Ronnie walk down with a flower basket. And so he was handing all the women flowers. And then when they got to that seat with Jada, I was like, oh. I was hoping that at the wedding, they would have had Jada be there, like, but as a ghost. So, like, but only Emmett and Darnell could see her. I was hoping it would be like that because that would have been so tea. And then, you know, the picture, don't get me wrong, I was still happy because, you know, that's typical at a lot of weddings. If, you know, people who were important to the bride and groom pass, they have the empty chair with the photo there. But I love the moment. And especially because, you know, Emmett said that his mom was pivotal to them having the wedding there. So I was like, yes. They all had on their suits. Charles officiated, which I found interesting because I didn't think nothing about Charles officiating that wedding. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I didn't think nothing about Charles. Charles ain't really, you know what I mean? But anyway, nonetheless, he was there in his green suit. We see Riley, Lene, and then surprisingly Tiff, because I was just like, oh, I didn't think Tiff was going to actually, like, be at the wedding and then still be the maid of honor. You know what I mean? But she was there. And then we see Keisha get ready to come out, and Emmett is just looking at Keisha. And, you know, to me, I was like, oh, because, you know, we didn't really have this moment with Emmett and Tiff. And so to see Emmett looking at Keisha and just, you know, like admiring her. And then guess who comes out the back to walk Keisha down the aisle? Kevin. Hey, Kevin, what you doing here? Glad to see you. Glad to see you join us. Glad to see you join us. Also, sidebar, because I forgot. As people were getting ready for the wedding, I forgot to mention there was a small scene with Angie. She was getting ready for the wedding. She was walking down the steps, and Hannibal was there. And so she was surprised to see Hannibal. She wasn't really expecting it. You know, when I was thinking about the wedding, I thought that, you know, she was going to take I thought she was gonna take Smitty as her +1, but now that I think about it, I don't know why I thought Hannibal wouldn't show up, because Hannibal was pivotal in Emmett's story. You know what I mean? I didn't think nothing about that. And he was pivotal in Tiff's story. But nonetheless, Hannibal was there. Surprisingly, Angie decided to not move forward with her marriage with Hannibal. And so this was their last day as husband and wife, because she chose to stay with Smitty, which I thought was crazy. But then I'm just like, okay, well, of course Hannibal will be around. Nuck is dead. And then Reg just went to jail. And I guess the whole reason why he was in witness protection was to be protected from Reg. So, but nonetheless, back to the wedding. Kevin walks Keisha down the aisle, you know. He tells her she looks beautiful, you know. He daps Emmett up, he gives her away. And then we see Maisha. I'm like, hey girl, hey Maisha. Then of course, Nina was still in the front row with LaPortia. I did see Dre back there, even though Dre never got like a front-facing moment in the camera. And maybe she did, but it might have been edited out. But, you know, we didn't see her get like her moment on screen with Keisha. But nonetheless, she was there. I did see Emmett's other baby mama there with their other son. And then, of course, Tevin, Mondo were there. Surprisingly, Amaya, which is Tevin's mom, came to the wedding alone, because I thought that Rafi would be with her, but he wasn't there. But there was a scene where Keith was at Smokey's cleaning up, and, you know, in the trailer, we saw somebody come to Smokey's looking for Keith, or I thought looking for Keith, and I thought it was Smitty, because I was just like, dang, you know, Smitty just so happened to go to jail out of nowhere. Was Keith the one to snitch on him? And was he coming back to Smokey's to, like, you know, do something to Keith? Because, you know, Keith told him that his girl won't gonna be, you know, selling street candy no more, and she won't gonna be the supplier and all of that. So, but nonetheless, it was Rafi. Rafi was looking for Bakari. And so I'm just like, so you was gonna go to Smokey's and do something to Bakari at this nice, fine, black-owned establishment? Anyway, so I was just like, okay, well, we know what that's about. We know what that's about. So, I also forgot to mention there was a moment between Brittany and Bakari as well. And Bakari told Brittany that, you know, he was ready to go, and that, you know, Lene was going with them. So, you know, at the wedding, it was just so nice to see that, you know, first it was nice to see that Lene was Keisha's bridesmaid. I would have loved, like, to see more sisterly moments between Keisha and Lene, but nonetheless, I'm glad that Lene was included and she was her bridesmaid, because that was like her sister. I was happy to see all the photo ops. You know, it was just like it was a wedding reception, but nonetheless, like a family reunion. Like, they had, the music was bumping, you know, everybody was having them a good time. Surprisingly, Trig got back with Fatima, which I'm just like, I wonder what made them go in the direction of him being with Fatima and not being with Tiff. Because in the beginning of the season, you know, when he first got out, there was a little moment, you know, with some little chemistry between him and Tiff. And so I was just like, oh, okay. But I wonder if this whole situation with Nuck, you know, made him turn the other cheek. I don't know. But there was moments, you know, because Trig did have a conversation with Fatima, and, you know, they was both going around the whole will we want they thing. And then, you know, we saw Shawnetta, and Shawnetta ended up getting with Isis. And which I kind of figured that from the bachelorette party, like from when they was saying all this stuff about, you know, who they would date or what they type is and all that stuff. So I figured they would get together. Who caught the bouquet at the wedding? Fatima caught the bouquet at the wedding, and Bakari caught the garter. And he looked at Lene, and the garden says, "You next." And so I was just like, okay. And Lene just looked so happy. As we know, they were leaving the next day, by the way. I was glad that there was no drama at the wedding. I'm glad that there was, it was just peaceful. Also, there was one moment between Emmett and Tiff that I thought was nice because, Emmett took the time, even though, this was his wedding day, he did take the time to acknowledge Tiff because, even though Tiff was a bridesmaid at the wedding and, their family, and that's still the mother of his child, that is his ex-wife. And, she probably could have felt the way during that day because he gave Keisha everything that she didn't have. And then, just because Tiff had been through so much, especially in the last weeks. And so, regardless of what she did do to Nuck, which, Emmett could have been mad about that. Emmett could have been mad about that. We never seen him confront Tiff about that. And so he could have been mad at Tiff for making things hard between him and Keisha. But nonetheless, he wanted to keep everything copacetic. He apologized to Tiff because he said there were a lot of moments where I made your life hard and I contributed to that, and I'm sorry. I love you. And they hugged and they embraced. And I was like, that's just so grown of them. I'm happy that they have finally got to this spot because, as we know, at one portion during the Chi, things was very rocky with Tiff and Emmett, and the whole thing with EJ, they were young parents, so even to see their relationship grow and get to this level, it's just great to see how their relationship has evolved over time. I was glad to see EJ there. Rob was there. Tiff mama was there because I forgot Tiff mama name. She was there. Tiff even had a moment with her mom where, she asked her mom to move in with her because she said she want her family back. And so because, y'all been riding Tiff about being a bad mom. Even though, Tiff struggled. But to be fair, the same way Emmett had to, do better as a parent, she had to come around and do better as a parent. So I'm going to extend Tiff grace. I'm going to extend Tiff grace because, she had to come to terms. And I think that the whole thing with Nuck was a big wake-up call for Tiff, nonetheless. Because as we see later on in the show, she went from, having a portrait of Rob, Alicia, and Rob's daddy. They switched the portrait out with the portrait of her mom, EJ, and baby Rob. And so I was just glad that, she was able to get some type of redemption, as a mother. Because, her relationship with EJ had been strained. EJ had been back and forth between Emmett and Tiff, So, yeah. I wish we could have got like a little moment between EJ and Devontae, though. We also saw Cassius. Cassius was there with his mama. Did I say that? I think I already said that. But yeah, there was a lot of moments. Jake asked Desiree to move in with him, which I was surprised because just the year prior, before Gemma left, he was not going for it. But I don't know, I guess he had a perspective change and maybe he really liked Desiree. He said he wanted to try. So I was surprised by Jake by that because, he was just like, when Gemma asked him, he was like, we is too young to be living together. But yeah, Desiree said that her people was going up on the rent, so she was looking for somewhere to go. And he was just like, we can find somewhere. So I was just like, okay then. There was a moment with Papa and Kenya, and Papa made it. I thought Papa was gonna go to heaven a couple episodes ago because he was self-medicating real heavy. And once we saw him start taking street candy, I was like, oh my God, he gonna accidentally slide to the upper room. But Papa got delivered. He got set free from his self-medication. He said he wanted better for himself. And, he wanted to eventually propose to Kenya. And so I was just like, you know what? Go ahead, Papa. I ain't mad. I'm glad you get your happy ending game. Because I'm glad you made it this far. Then there was a moment where we saw Jake, Papa, and Kevin with they were sitting on the sideline watching Mondo, Devontae, and Tevin dance. And it was just like a, oh my God, they're us type thing. You know what I mean? It was cute. I felt nothing but happy feelings during this episode. I did not cry. I did not cry. I didn't even get teary-eyed. It was just, more so of just feelings of closure. Even though, you have so many thoughts of, well, why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? Because it's the last episode, and you're like, oh, well, I had questions about this. But I don't have any I don't have anything I don't have anything to say. I just felt nothing but happy feelings. I just felt nothing but happy feelings. Also, what else? I was gonna say something. There was a scene where Charles asked Zuri did she want to be married, and she said she did, but not yet. What else happened at the wedding? Oh, like I was saying, I was hoping that we was gonna see like a couple scenes with Jake, Kevin, and Papa, because Kevin ain't been home since he left. But it's the last episode, y'all. They can't fit everything in the last episode. But I was happy to see that. I was happy to see Nina and Kevin come back. Tracy was there. They had Sonny was there. They had so many OGs there from the season. Of course, we know Hannibal came back. I think I can move forward now to the time jump. There was a time, no, actually, before we get to the time jump. So the next day, we see Lene, Keisha, and Bakari at Lene's and Keisha's old house. And Lene was handing Keisha the keys, and I'm just like, dang, that's another house that's available. Who could get the house? But anyway, Bakari was there. He was moving all Lene's stuff onto a truck. And so, of course, as we know, this scene is reminiscent of Menace to Society. And so, while they're talking, while they're moving things, Keisha is having a whole reflection moment. She's reflecting on all the moments they had in the house. The dinners. She gave birth to Ronnie in the house. She first came home with Ronnie. They was in a room. All the minutes with Kevin and Papa and them, they was there. And so it was a real tearful moment, because it's marking the end of this journey. And I thought that, maybe LaPortia and Nina would come back, and get the house, because they were traveling the world, yes, but they still needed somewhere to go, when they weren't traveling. But I guess they was just gonna live on the RV. But nonetheless, Keisha's having this moment of reminiscing or whatever. And then we see Bakari go outside to the truck, and we see a black Suburban come down the road, and I'm just like, oh my God. Now, one thing I can say is the scene was, very closely replicated of the one from Menace to Society. And of course, Rafi was there. And so Bakari looked, and he saw, and Rafi pulled his mask up. And of course, Rafi aired it out. But I'm glad they didn't show that, because that scene in Menace to Society was very traumatizing. But we saw Bakari gasping for air the same way Kane was grasping for air at the end. The only difference between that is we were able to find out what happened after that. Because there was even a moment where during the season where I went back and I watched that last scene. I went on Tubi and I found the movie and I watched that last scene. And I asked my husband, I was just like, so did Kane survive? We don't know, because at the end he was talking at the end of the movie. So I was just like, maybe he survived. I know his homeboy passed, but we never knew. And so I was glad that, we were able to see Bakari survived. Because, Lord, all of us thought it was over for Bakari. But, you know, a lot of people did predict that Bakari wouldn't make it. He would get hit, but he would make it. And so they were right. You know, and I'm glad because I wanted to see Bakari make it. And so I'm glad they ended the show on a good note. I mean, he did have to pay. He had to atone for the situation with Ronnie. And of course, Rafi got beat up and his ego couldn't take it. So of course, you know, especially going back to like, I think it was episode 1 or 2 where he was like, I'm not Ronnie. So I figured he would come back and do something like that. I mean, we all did, nonetheless. But, so yeah, Lene ran out there in the yard. And so then we get a time jump of 1 year. We see a book signing. Brittany's walking around with a book. And so, of course, there was a whole lot of seeing the scene initially. You know how in the beginning of the show, they were saying, like, in order for your book to blow up, you got to die. But a lot of us predicted that the story that was being told was Bakari's book. So the whole show was based off of Bakari's book. Bakari was telling his story. And so we got to see Brittany walking in with the books. It was a book signing. It was full. A lot of people was in there. And then we could see Lene sitting at the table. And then, of course, like, there are people standing at the table, so we don't see Bakari. But then as they leave, we see Bakari, and Bakari signing books. And then he looks over at Lene, and then, of course, Lene is pregnant, which a lot of people guessed or predicted that Lene would be pregnant because there was a couple times throughout the season where we saw that her and Bakari was active. And there was a couple times, especially in, I think, the last season where, no, it was the end of season 6, when he thought that she was about to break up. He asked, was she pregnant? And so then them having kids came up a couple of times this season. So a lot of people predicted that Lene would be pregnant, and so Lene was pregnant. So we saw that. We saw that Emmett opened up Smokey's location in Houston, Atlanta, and Vegas. They had the mural for Our Forever Angel with Jada in the back. We saw Rashad, Fatima, Isis, Shanetta, and somebody else. I couldn't see because they back was to the camera. But they were having dinner. They were still together. They was, you know, living together. Then we saw Patience and Mondo and Rashad at their house. Then we saw at Smokey's, it was Emmett, Keisha, Darnell, Riley, Devontae, I think Cassius and Ronnie and baby Jada. They was eating at Smokey's together as a family. Then we saw Shanetta, Zuri, Angie, Smitty, Charles, and Isis together. So, you know, it was just a good rounding of the episode. I don't have no complaints. Oh, and of course, we get our famous end scene with the boys riding the bikes through the city. Mondo, Tevin, and Devontae riding through the city on the bikes, which of course pays homage to Kevin, Jake, and Papa. They did that in the beginning of the show. They did it when Kevin left the show. And now they did it with those three. I was hoping that we would get one last bike ride with Kevin, Jake, and Papa, and then like they would see like Mondo and them standing out there on the street or something, and then they get off the bikes and hand it to them. But you know, you can't get everything you want. It's fine. I still the way they did it still was good. But yeah, y'all, I think that's everything. I'm glad that, you know, this episode was just full of so many happy moments, so many flashbacks, so many like remember moments, and everybody got the happy ending. Oh, I forgot to mention the scene with Trig, Reg, and Jake, where Trig was like, I'm gonna get you out of here, and Reg was like, nah, it's cool, I'm gonna take one for the team. And Jake was like, we're not gonna let you stay in here. And then Reg was like, it's cool. And then Reg finally told his brothers he loved them. And so Jake was like, I love you too. And then Reg turned and looked at Trig, and Trig was tore up. Trig was tore up. And Trig being tore up caused Reg to be tore up. And then he grabbed his hand. And I was just like, this was the moment of healing that Trig and Reg needed, because as we know, since Reg came back, Trig and Reg constantly clashed. And I think it was like a moment of forgiveness because, you know, a lot of times we saw Jake not like Reg because of all the stuff that Reg put him through. But, you know, and a lot of us didn't like Reg because I know I was one of them. But also, I had to come to the realization that, you know, Reg felt left by Trig. You know what I mean? And so, with their mom being on substance, I guess Trig was supposed to be the one to stay around and help raise Reg. But Trig was in the streets too. And so I guess Reg kind of followed suit. That's just what, you know, I was guessing. Or, you know, maybe the thoughts that I was having. But I was happy to see today, you know, got their moment of healing. Healing was in the room with us. And I was thankful. And we also seen, you know, a scene of Reg sitting in jail 1 year later reading Bakari's book. And so I was just like, you know what? And he seemed happy. You know, I thought at least 1 year later he would have got out. They would have found some way to get him out. But, you know, I guess, you know, with all the things that Reg have done, I guess Reg going to jail, even though he wrongfully went to jail, I guess him going to sit down was a way for him to atone for the things he had done. So, yeah, I think that's all I have for this episode. Like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure if you haven't already, I do have a playlist full of these reviews. So if you have not watched all my reviews, or, you know, you decide to do a rewatch, go back and check out all my reviews. Also, I am reviewing Beyond the Gates if you are a Beyond the Gates watcher. I pretty much upload my review for Beyond the Gates almost every day. And also, I am reviewing the last season of All American. So, if you like what you saw, stay tuned, and I'll be back with more videos. Deuces.